Welcome to Grappling with Gray, a forum for promoting an ethical mindset and ethical decision-making to help us more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I would like to thank my guests and welcome them. With me today, I have Tim Hawkes, who's Managing Director of Unlimited Potential Coaching Specialists in the UK and Director of Global Operations. He's an international speaker and works with organizations to develop organizational culture. Dr. Robin is a concierge high-performance psychologist who works with people who have to keep it together because the stakes are too high for them to fall apart. She is also the host of the Quick Hits podcast, where we have all met each other before. And Stuart Wiggins is chief advisor at Induna Advisors, working to significantly increase company revenue by developing positive client reports and establishing solid business relationships. Thank you all for being with me today.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
And I'm Rabbi Yonason Goldson, and here is today's ethics challenge. A woman recently sued Kraft Heinz for $5 million over misleading advertising. The company markets its Velveeta Shells Cheese as being ready in 3.5 minutes. In fact, that's the amount of time each cup needs to be microwaved, but it doesn't include the actual preparation process from stirring in water to letting the cheese sauce thicken. The 15-page class action lawsuit states, quote, as a result of the false and misleading representations, the product is sold at a premium price. The plaintiff claims she chose Velveeta over other similar products because of the prep time prominently promised on its label. She wouldn't have bought it had she known the truth. As a side note, the plaintiff's lawyer has reportedly filed over 400 similar lawsuits. Granted that the preparation time promised was not entirely accurate, can it be considered sufficiently misleading to be considered false advertising? To what standard should manufacturers and marketers be held? Is the response of a class action lawsuit and a $5 million claim proportionate? Or do such cases do more harm than good by contributing to an already litigious society and straining an already inefficient legal system? The floor is open.
If I were on this jury, I think I would say, to the letter of the law, she is right. Yay, congratulations. You get $1. Kraft, change your marketing. There we go. End of conversation.
Well, that was easy, wasn't it, Robin? Wow. I mean, cut me in, yeah.
The thing is, though, if we were going to go for the sake of the conversation, when does prep time start? When does ready to eat? When does your time start? Does it start when you think about it? Does it start when you open the pantry? Does it start when you open the box? And when does it end? Does it end when it's at its ideal temperature and you can eat it? Or does it end when it's done cooking and you could eat it, but it's too hot and not thick?
So just on that point, one of my key things that Yonason said in the intro is about the thickness of the sauce. I mean, some people, a bit like a cup of tea, they like it at a certain temperature and a certain color, don't they? And my thickness ideal level may be different to yours. And so therefore there's some movement here, isn't there? And it becomes then more of an individualistic thing. Just a sort of top level for me, I mean, my immediate thought is, where the hell's the common sense here? This is my sort of like, come on, we need a bit of common sense. And then immediately I start going, well, hang on a minute. It's not that simple, is it? Because we can lob some common sense in here, but where's the common sense to be applied? Is it the lady who's made this outrageous claim that 3.5 minutes is not true? Is it the lawyer who's, in my mind, clearly after some money? Or is the common sense, should that lie with Kraft Foods, who should just really just sit down and go, we've pushed the limit on this one. It's been a bit cheeky. Let's back off and state some facts here. And I think a lot of people would be going, oh, this is ridiculous. Where's the common sense? But I think it's nowhere near as easy as that, is it? The common sense lies in many places. Where do we start?
Well, I think you're right, Tim. What's the quality? I mean, some 3.5 minutes might be perfect for 5 out of 10 people. Maybe some people want to sit longer to get it to be thicker, but what is she really paying for? I mean, so what she's doing is she's putting a value on time over quality, okay? Because I went out and looked And there is no marketing that says 3.5 minutes. In fact, it only says 3.5 minutes on the side of the packaging. But there is some disclaimers. Did you know that the higher the altitude, the shorter amount of time it takes for water to boil, but the water is not as hot at higher altitudes, okay? So what are you actually getting there? The question that really needs to be asked is, what does she want? Does she want a 3.5 minute mush, or does she want quality? And if she's paying for what she believes is quality because of the name Velveeta, which in fact, a review shows that it has 4.5-star review across all segments.
Mm.
So what we're really talking about is this, if this was a bell curve, where would she be on the bell curve in her opinion about this? So I think we're saying the same thing. It's a waste of time, but really, what is she looking for?
I'll tell you what she's looking for, her share of the 5 million.
Yeah. Well, you remind me, Stuart, of these medical product ads where they spend 15 seconds telling you what the product does and 75 seconds telling you everything that could possibly go wrong if you use it. And it's sort of like, why are you wasting my time with this? I mean, as you said, Tim, there should be common sense here, but of course we know that common sense is anything but common. And what is the expectation? Does any of us really expect the information on the box to be 100% accurate?
When I talk to people, because obviously I have continuing education in nutrition, and when I talk to people, I tell them, assume that everything on the front and side of the package is marketing and it's complete nonsense. Except for the ingredients list, which is required by law to be correct, everything else is marketing and complete nonsense.
I just
Yeah,
wonder.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that, Robin's right, that everything on there is subject to interpretation. And I still believe that, here's my candid opinion. If she thinks that Velveeta shells are good and doesn't realize that she could take an extra 15 minutes and shred the cheese, get some good pasta, boil it, who thinks that pasta is going to be ready in 3.5 minutes? Nobody. Pasta takes about 8 minutes just to get al dente, but this is one man's opinion. I just think that we have to consider the source in which, if she thinks Velveeta is good, and if she's putting a premium on speed, then what else is she purchasing where she puts a premium on speed? I sat back and thought about it. I couldn't think of anything that I thought that I put a premium on speed over quality.
So what if the argument goes in a different direction, which is, let's imagine that this legal beagle who has taken on this suit and has done 400 previous ones, whether they were against the same company or not would be interesting to find out. But is now what's that lawyer's purpose? What are they trying to achieve? And I do wonder whether this lady has found herself caught in a trap of the lawyer's making, which is, maybe she suggested it on a Facebook chat, and he have gone in and gone, oh, well, roll with this, come on, there's a bit of money coming your way, and suddenly this this lady's been drawn into something for which maybe they had no idea, or on the promise of some money that may or may not come. And actually, ethically, the lawyer here is possibly in the right or wrong. I don't know, but should that not be where the focus is?
Well, and in the UK, Tim, you can't just willy-nilly sue people, right? There's a cost to that. You don't get to come in and go, I'm suing you and you're going to pay my legal fees. Like, that's not a thing there. So
no, I mean, I don't know the legal system here extremely well, but I mean, if you wouldn't be able to take that on. A judge would stand around and say some common sense would apply here, and this is not going to take off. I think if somebody was going to take Kraft Heinz on this, it would be done at a governmental level. So, if it was a wildly outrageous claim on the packet, the government would take that company and would make them change their viewpoint. And I think there's not so much benefit in the UK. It doesn't pay out. Legal claims don't pay out in the UK like the sort of sums they do there. You might argue that this lady didn't get her 3.5 minutes, she got her 7 minutes. Well, here's your $2 back, and it's all done. We're happy. Let's move on. So I do struggle in my mind to work out how on earth you can justify a £5 million claim for what is possibly a $2 pot of bad noodles.
Well, that's the whole
or-
idea with the class action lawsuits is you find, 1,000 or 10,000 plaintiffs, and you'll sue for $5 million. Each one of them will get $50 or $100 or $500, and the lawyer will get a third of the entire settlement.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you wouldn't get class action in the UK.
Yeah. And, there's sometimes companies do things that really are egregious and really should be held to account,
Mhm.
even if there isn't a tremendous financial damage. And that's sort of where we get into that gray area.
Well, it's about
How much
lying about.
license can you take in your advertising before you've crossed some kind of a line where you should be held accountable? And that's very hard to quantify. Stuart?
I was going to say two things. First of all, if you look at this history of this attorney, he may have a lot of cases, but the preponderance are settled. So they don't get to a point where there's a huge payout. So he's making his living on settlements. And also keep in mind, Kraft's a big company. They have a lot of lawyers on staff. They have professionals that figure out what needs to go on the label and what they can legally say just so they can avoid this type of situation. But I made the comment earlier about the bell curve. There's always the outliers. They're going to try to figure out a way to get something out of this. So, from my perspective, I think that she and this lawyer are trying to make a little bit of money off of a big claim.
Mhm.
But there is an argument to say, isn't there? Just as the press holds our government to account, does the legal system hold our corporations to account? And should it? Yes.
It should, but it doesn't.
Or does it?
Well, that's why
And-
they call it the fourth estate, though.
Does this lawsuit here do that? Does it hold these, you see the emissions scandals in Europe with VW and Audi, they're making claims about their cars pushing out this amount, and they weren't at all, and it was all false. Now that's outrageous.
Mhm.
And that was picked up at a governmental level and dealt with at that level. And at what point do we allow these corporates to run amok for the pursuit of profit and share allocations?
Oh, don't even get me started on the FDA and all the people who sit on the boards and the pockets and the politicians and all the nonsense that is who's supposed to be keeping us safe from the crazy and the money grab.
So is this actually an anti-corruption activity?
What's the corruption?
They lied on their label. They said 3.5 minutes and it's not.
Well, that 3.5 minutes, is that optimal? Or is that 3.5? Is that 3.5 minutes what the point where it becomes barely palatable?
And that
And-
was my question at the top. Where is the on and off of ready in? Where do you start saying, okay, this is turn the stopwatch on, and then where do you turn the stopwatch off? And I
Well,
don't
what
think
does
it's
prep
clear
time
cut.
mean? Does prep time mean cook time, or does it mean the entire process time?
And I think that's where some common sense can be applied, that in that there is some flexibility here, which it does make you wonder how the lady involved came to the conclusion that because it says 3.5 minutes, it should be 3.5 minutes.
Well, it does say ready in 3.5 minutes. That's what it says on the package, ready.
And
So really-
ready from what point though? What's the start point?
Good question. Good question. Let me look at the label again. Maybe it does say ready from what point. I don't think it did when I looked at it previously.
So recipes online usually say cook time and prep time. They have separate times on
Absolutely.
them. And you know what? The prep time is never right. That might be the prep time for a sous chef who's really good at this and understands what the devil I'm supposed to be doing. But for normal people, that prep time is nonsense.
So it's really interesting because when I read this blurb, I hadn't focused on the prep time at all. I was much more interested in the bigger picture storyline of what companies can get away with and what they can't get away with, and
Mhm.
what individuals or class suits can get away with. You said it's black, and I think it might be slightly grey. Well, let's discuss. All these sorts of things. I do think there's an important element of holding corporates to account. Corporates will do all they can to make profit. And if it means,
Absolutely.
shaving 3.5 minutes to 3 minutes 15 because the competitor says they can do theirs in 3.5 minutes, well, it'll make us look more superior. Let's stick it on and wait for the lawsuit to come in. And then when it comes in, we'll pay out and change it back and everyone will be happy.
Mhm.
So therefore, the lawsuit does act as a counterbalance to perhaps corporate behavior, where you're sitting around in a corporate room saying, we've got to cut costs, we've got to market more, we've got to sell more. What edgy thing can we do that's going to do that?
So here
Yeah,
it
we had
says,
a-
simply remove the lid and sauce pouch, add water to the fill line, microwave uncovered for 3.5 minutes, stir the liquid golden cheese sauce and enjoy.
3.5
Doesn't say
minutes.
anything about ready to eat. It's just 3.5 minutes, stir in the liquid gold cheese sauce and enjoy.
The
So
stirring
yeah.
takes at least 10 seconds.
I mean, would she not have been better off taking them to court for the health disaster that this meal really actually is? Because I mean, I don't know anything about your
Yeah.
Velveeta Shells and Cheese. I don't know
It's
what
not
they are at
food,
all.
I can tell you
Sounds
that.
grim to me.
It's
I mean, she
not
would have been
food.
she'd have had a much better following if she turned around and said, or perhaps even that the pots they come in are not environmentally friendly. Now, I could have got behind that. But I think that's what makes this so interesting, isn't it? This 3.5 minute thing is just so trivial.
Robin, you were talking about the FDA, and don't get you started, and I won't. But there was a time when the FDA was desperately needed because manufacturers were putting all sorts of things into products that were.
Oh, they still are. They just don't do their
well,
job.
Yeah, but at least in principle. So on the one hand, they're not doing their job to enforce it when it's needed, and they're doing too much of a job elsewhere and preventing us from having products that would actually be good for us. A week or two ago, we talked about unions. There was a time when unions were desperately needed.
Absolutely.
And then they became too powerful. And now we're in this tension because, again, it goes back to your comment about common sense, Tim. And I still remember my first semester in college when I took Philosophy 101, and I think I've recovered from that by now. But learning Descartes, the first thing Descartes says is that let's start with common sense because everybody believes themselves to have enough. And as as a 17-year-old college freshman, I said, what? They may believe themselves to, but there's nothing less common than common sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that seems to be critical to being ethical. So we're stuck in this complicated situation where we can't quantify everything because it's simply impractical. And yet we don't have sufficient common sense to be able to have the flexibility that makes the system work.
So as a
you can't.
manufacturer, do you have an expectation that all your customers have common sense? Is that the I built this, I put it on the label, they should have the common sense to know what to do with from here. Is that what the manufacturer is saying?
Well, but you know what? Chicken manufacturers get away with that by saying that it's common sense that you don't get salmonella, but it's impossible to bring raw chicken into your house and not get salmonella in your house. It's not a thing. You can't do it. But chicken manufacturers get away with it all the time. If you prepare it correctly, you won't get salmonella. False, but that's what they say.
Do you wash your chicken or not?
I don't eat chicken. You know that.
Well, that's one way to avoid the problem. But should they be responsible for the reality that raw chicken has salmonella and some people may not be adept at preparing it properly?
And the fact that the slaughter process spreads it and splashes it all over the frickin' place?
I mean, pork has trichinosis if you don't cook it properly.
Yep. Is it buyer beware? And in that case, 3.5 minutes is 4 minutes. Too bad. Buyer beware.
So slightly for me, I mean, the chicken's naturally produced by God, I guess, and and it gets processed to some degree and then gets sent to us, but it comes to us roughly in chicken form. Whereas a Velveeta Shells and Cheese, well, I have to say, none of that's very natural to me. It has been human made, it's been human processed, it's in a human system, and it probably goes in a human made microwave. Whereas, humans have been eating chicken since the beginning of time. I'm sure salmonella was around then. I don't know. But I do wonder whether what we've got here, and Yonason said it really interesting, is we've got ourselves caught in a human-made system everything about this discussion is human made, isn't it? The Velveeta shells are human made, the pot they're made in is human made, then the legal suit is a human made creation, and then the whole discussion is human made. And for me, I just wonder whether that in that human made environment, we do lose our common sense, don't we? We create, it's false. It's not human to us, because it's a system around us, and we're manipulating it to our best advantage. And it essentially appeals to the egoic state, which sort of says, well, I can get 5 million out of this, I might as well do it. And I think that's probably one of my biggest issues with this. It's just the whole thing's deeply inhuman.
If you saw Velveeta cheese, you would know that.
It's not, it's actually like one molecule from being plastic. It's awful.
Yeah. Well, we could do a different episode on that, but we have a comment here, and I'm incapable of multitasking, so this is very exciting for me. Aya asks, to what standard should manufacturers and marketers be held? And that's really what we're after here. If there has to be some level of responsibility on the consumer. If I'm going to buy a raw chicken, I have a certain responsibility for preparing that raw chicken in a way that's not going to make my family sick.
Well, ultimately, the responsibility sits with the health of your family. So you're going to find out a way to do it, aren't you?
Well, yeah. So what's the responsibility of the manufacturer, the producer, the marketer? It's to not grossly misrepresent. Or is it to not represent anything? I mean, you've been saying throughout this whole thing, I mean, all of you, that there's so much flexibility in the prep time. What do we want them to say on the bottle or on the box? Preparation time between 3 and 15 minutes?
If you don't get distracted.
Actually, I found another label, and it says uncovered on high for 3.5 minutes or until pasta is done.
But it does raise the question, doesn't it? Why 3.5 minutes? What is the importance of this number? Because it's on there for a reason. Why is that important?
Well, because humans have to have instructions if they're going to cook whatever, that we can't even call it food. If they're going to cook it, they have to know. You can't just say, like the Great British Baking Show, bake, no temperature, no time, just bake it.
Well, I think that they're really selling the convenience. They're selling the speed. In other words, I could buy regular pasta and regular cheese, and as you said, I could spend half an hour making something that's actually somewhat edible. Or I can buy something that I can stick in the microwave and have ready in a few minutes. And so I'm paying for the convenience. I mean, that's what we call it, convenience food. And what's really being argued here is it's not as convenient as it's marketed to be.
Well, that's her whole point. She thought she was getting something premium based on the price point that was on the Velveeta cheese. If it's like in one of the first paragraphs that you read, she's paying more because of she believes that speed gives her a quality product. So one of the notes I had early on, which we hadn't discussed, is, does speed equal quality? And that's
not in this case.
Not in this case at all.
I think mostly not, really.
No, not at all.
I mean, fast food is not known for its quality by definition.
But if they'd sat down and said, right, we need to market this, we need to stand out in our marketplace, and they've decided that putting 3.5 minutes on their thing is the way forward, why is that different to ready in less than 5 minutes?
Bingo. Absolutely.
There must be a reason, and it'll be something to do with competitor products.
Well, 3.5 minutes does sound fast. Actually, under 5 minutes sounds fast, but I think that she was chasing speed for some reason.
But I mean, I don't think she was mentally disturbed by this episode. I mean, if it had burnt her tongue because she'd followed the instructions,
You could have sued for that too.
That would be a different thing. But that's the thing. Has she actually been put out by this in such a egregious manner that she feels that she needs to get some response, some return for that? My sense is no. And in that respect, ethically, you have got to question, come on, where's the common sense?
That's a really good point. That on the one hand, I think we're all having trouble giving her too much benefit of the doubt when it comes to her motives. It feels like this is just an attempt to get some quick cash. On the other hand, that may not exempt the manufacturer of being less than accurate in their marketing.
And why do we allow corporations to get away with stuff until someone sues them for something ridiculous, like it's not 3.5 minutes?
So Robin, do you think that McDonald's should have lost the case when the lady spilled that half copy on her lap and burned her leg?
Have you actually looked at that though? She
That's
had
a
to
really
sue them
complicated
because
case.
she needed, they weren't going to pay her medical bills.
Right.
But I mean, by definition, it was hot coffee. How you handle it once it's in your possession is you. You know, the only liability that McDonald's has was it hot and did we put the lid on correctly? If they put the lid on correctly and you burn yourself, c'est la vie.
Well, and that, that's a question that I was at a home improvement store recently, and the guy bought a whole bunch of tubes of liquid nail stuff. And as he was leaving the store, they fell off his cart and 2 of them broke. And he said, these broke, and he went and got new ones. Well, but you already paid for it, so that's on you.
But going back to the cup thing, the cup may have been manufactured badly. The seal around the outside, the glue might have given way. That's not McDonald's responsibility. That's the responsibility of the cup manufacturer. So do McDonald's then counter sue the cup? Of course they do. So I think to say it's really simple, it may not be. But I think going back to this issue, I think the problem that I have is this is a purely legal matter, isn't it? It's a matter of, you've said 3.5 minutes. My view isn't that. So I'm suing you for that statement. But where's the pain? For me, the legal process is there to help people who have suffered. Something's happened to them, something that has either affected them physically, mentally, or probably that's the only 2 ways I can think of.
Emotionally.
And in this case, emotionally. Okay. So
That's actually how they get paid emotionally. That's what they get paid for.
That's what they get paid for, the emotional trauma.
Well, yeah, but in this case, I'm struggling to think that an extra 30 seconds of warming up your pasta is actually emotional trauma.
I think it has more to do with the claim of corporate irresponsibility. That they were not upright in presenting their product, and they need to be held accountable. And then we could get into a conversation, which we won't right now, about where should the money for punitive damages go? If I was damaged, I'm entitled to that money. But if we're making we're punishing the company for being irresponsible with punitive damages, why am I entitled to that? Because I suffered $10 of loss and now I get $5 million because that's the slap on the wrist for the company. But of course, if it doesn't go to me, where does it go?
Lawyer.
Anyway, in any case, it goes to the lawyer, but that's a topic for another time. So if you'd each like to take a minute and sum up your final thoughts on this, Robin, you want to start us off?
Yeah. So like I said at the top, if I was on a jury for this, I would be like, yes, you're right. Yay, you get $1. Thank you very much for your time and service. And I would tell the manufacturer, look, if it's not ready in 3 minutes, and I don't even know what that means, maybe under 5 minutes is a better choice. But for me, if I were on a jury, I would throw this out as frivolous.
Yeah, and you do find that juries will find in favor of the plaintiff, and yet only impose a minimal fee, because they're really saying, okay, technically this was wrong, but it just doesn't rise to the level of massive damage. Stuart, you want to go next?
This is what's the core of what's wrong with litigation. Is we're wasting people's time and money on something about, nobody got sick, nobody died. Is this the first time she ever bought this stuff? What was she eating before? Has she never had pasta and cheese before? These are the questions that I would ask. It's a waste of people's time. It's a waste of her money, unless this guy's doing it for pro bono.
I bet he is.
But, of course he is.
Well, he's doing it for a percentage if he wins.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. But I mean, it's a waste of time. This has been a great discussion. It's caused us to think and look at different ways about it. But I think that the victim is the woman, but she's the victim because she probably fell in with a bad attorney who says, I can get you paid for this.
Tim, last word.
I'll keep it simple. I think she needs to go back to spend more time with her family and friends and focus on stuff that's not going to eat her up. No pun intended. I think the lawyer needs to focus on things where there are actual victims, because I think there's going to be more ethics and more morality in that. And I think finally, the company needs to focus not just on profit, but on the 3 P's of profit: people, profit, planet.
I like it. And you remind me of certain students I had when I was teaching who put so much time and effort into cheating that if they would have put half that effort into actually learning the material, they would have come out way ahead.
Yeah.
And people who are looking to game the system have all this creativity that could be productively directed. And if we have
Authenticity.
our values straight, we're not looking to make a quick buck just because it looks like there's an avenue to do that.
Yeah,
So,
authenticity and honesty have great long-term benefits.
Yeah. And of course, that's what we're here to do, is to promote ethical thinking, because ultimately that's what makes for a healthy society, if not necessarily a healthy diet. But so thank you all. It's been an absolute pleasure. Tim Hawks, Dr. Robin, and Stuart Wiggins. I do hope you will join me again.
Absolutely.
For those of you who are watching and listening, if you'd like to suggest an ethical scenario or dilemma for discussion, please go to my website, yonasongoldson.com. Use the contact information. Submit your proposal. If it's something compelling, we will definitely take it up. If you'd like to raise your ethical awareness, you can go to yonasongoldson.com/freebie, and you can request a free ebook, white paper, or infographic. Please join us again next week for another ethical dilemma when the panel grapples with the gray.